What were your reasons originally for joining up with the Air Force?
I was always keen on aeroplanes, and one of my things influenced me in joining the Air Force is that I could fight sitting down.
You must have been very young when you originally enrolled.
Yes, I was 17 when I took a day off boarding school and went in and did my medical, but I did not get into uniform until about March or February or March of 1942. I was 17 in 41.
The younger generation, the modern generation of young people would find it difficult to understand why in Australia would felt to be called to go and fight so far away from their home country.
Yes, well, I think that there was a different sort of spirit in those days, and I was brought up in a family where my father spent 3 years in the mud in the Somme, and I just sort of thought I'd follow in his footsteps, but not go to the mud in the Somme.
Did your parents object at all?
No. My father said to me, "I hope you haven't got any bloody silly ideas about going into the Air Force," and he knew then that I'd already, signed up.
So where did you receive your first training?
Well, I did my rookies training, which is sort of drill and elementary firearms thing at Victor Harbour, south of Adelaide. And that was when I learned how to march properly, and had small arms training and lessons in navigation and airmanship and a whole lot of basic training. But I had already had 4 years in the Army Cadets at my boarding school, and I held a commission for 18 months before I ever got into the Air Force. That was a commission in the cadets, in the Army Cadets.
Mm. Where did you first start flying then?
At Parafield, which is an aerodrome north of Adelaide, and that was it's now the second aerodrome, but it was the aerodrome for the whole of South Australia, and it was an all-over grass field, no runways, but nicely kept grass.
What type of aircraft?
Tiger Moth. I did about 80 hours on Tiger Moths.
What did you think of them?
A lovely aeroplane,
Right.
yeah, very forgiving. If you got into any trouble, all you had to do was take your hands and feet off the controls and the thing would right itself. There were cases which, when we used to practice spinning, that you could, with a lot of mishandling, you could get into an inverted spin from which you wouldn't get out. But you had to be, pretty ham-fisted for that.
Did many of the fellows drop out of the course at that stage?
I think at that stage, probably about 20% were deemed to, get some other mustering except a pilot. But when I went to Deniliquin, there was a very strict chief flying instructor there, and his nickname was Scrubber Scott, because he, I think, would scrub about a third of the aircrew that went in to be single-engine pilots. And they were either scrubbed off altogether or reallocated to be observers or gunners, or some of them went on to twin-engine aircraft.
What was the next type of aircraft that you flew?
Well, the Wirraway was the training aeroplane at Deniliquin, and it was fairly gutless and fairly heavy aeroplane, and it was no match for the Japanese Zero, although I think a Wirraway did shoot one down. But there was a saying that night flying with a two-bladed Wirraway, they had two-bladed prop ones and three-bladers, but night flying in a two-bladed Wirraway was like farting in fate's face with a faltering fan.
Right.
Yeah, I remember that. There just came there.
What did you think of that aircraft to fly?
It was not an easy aircraft to fly. It had characteristic of dropping a wing just as you were about to land. In other words, there was some basic, inherent trickery operating in that aeroplane, that you really had to fly it properly.
Mm. And what's the next step of the journey from there?
Well, I graduated as a sergeant pilot, and a few months or a couple of months later I was exported to UK via America, and that was an interesting trip, going unescorted across the Pacific. It was on a ship called the New Amsterdam. I was very glad to see San Francisco Golden Gate.
Did you get any scares on that ship?
No, but there were U-boats about, but they were fairly, the ship, the New Amsterdam, was fairly fast. It travelled at about 27 knots, really, but being a sergeant pilot, I was in the sort of main dining area, and it was discovered fairly soon that the weevils were in the soup. They were dead, of course, but they were there, and I sort of lived up on deck for most of the 2 weeks of journey, and lived on Coca-Cola and canned food.
Yeah.
But the sleeping accommodation, well, I was in a cabin for two with 30 other blokes, and it was a bit crowded, you see. And the first night out, we woke up in the morning, and we were in straw mattresses, and we were all bitten from top to toe with bed bugs, you see, so that influenced me to sleep on the deck at night.
Ah. So you ended up in America?
Yeah, but only passed through America. We went by train to from San Francisco to a town called Taunton, which is in Massachusetts. It's about 70 miles from Boston. And from Boston, at least from there, I went to from Halifax to Liverpool, and that was a fairly risky sort of journey across the Atlantic. We went up as far as Greenland and then Spain to sort of zigzag for not getting in touch with the direct touch with U-boats.
Was the ship by itself too?
Yeah.
Certainly would be a worry, wouldn't it?
Yes, it was. Well, I know there was a war on, you know.
So where did you berth in England then?
Liverpool.
Oh yeah.
And then I was posted to a sort of hostel place in Bournemouth. And then I eventually eased into more flying training. And I did my some training on Miles Masters. I did some day-night flying, and then I was posted to Hurricane Operational Training Squadron, and that was my first operational training. And although we were training aircraft, we did wander around England with loaded guns, you see, which was essential in case, you know, some emergency happened, or we could, you know, be of use. After my operational training, I did some extra low-level training in Hawker Hurricanes, and then I was posted to a Typhoon squadron with number 3 RAF, and that was at the stage being re-equipped from Typhoons to Hawker Tempest Mark 5 Series 2.
What was the feeling on the squadron when you knew that you'd be the first squadron to receive the RAF's new Tempests?
Well, we were very, very pleased indeed, but the early Tempest had a fault with it, with the gear which controlled the speed of the air screw, or the propeller speed, and it had a fault with some material which was used in the washers to contain the oil, and that material used to break down on occasions, and the propeller would go into fully fine, which would give you about 3,900 RPM, and if that occurred on takeoff, you just have time to do a circuit and land again before your cylinder head temperature blew up.
Oh.
But that was very. They put new seals on it, and we never had any trouble after that.
So what were the first operations that 3 Squadron did in their new Tempests?
Oh, patrols, patrols into seaports from our bases, and we used to do a lot of shipping reconnaissance into ports on the French coast, but we did quite a number of very long fighter sweeps over Belgium and France, particularly Belgium, and they were just general armed reconnaissance, trying to pick up any targets that we could.
3 Squadron suddenly discovered that they'd been given a new task.
Yeah, no, well, it was the same thing, but with a better aircraft.
Right.
That was it. We were doing the same work as I did several, about 20 hours operations on the Typhoon, but this was the fastest piston-driven aircraft in the RAF during World War II. It was faster than the best Spitfire and about 20 miles faster than the Mosquito, and it was just the aeroplane to be in.
They wouldn't select just any old squadron to give an aircraft like that to?
No, well, squadron, I don't think that's entirely true. Number 3 Squadron had a long history. The numbers 1 and 2 had kites and balloons, and number 3 Squadron was the first squadron in the Royal Air Force to have aircraft.
To have fighters?
No, ordinary aircraft.
Oh, right,
And
right.
it was formed in 1911, I think.
How?
So it was a very old, established squadron, really.
Yeah. The squadron then went over to trying to knock down these flying bombs.
Yes, well, we were posted to an airfield in Kent called Newchurch. That was on the Romney Marsh area, and we operated day and night from 2 900-yard strips of wire netting on grass. And if we were night flying, there was a couple of red hurricane lamps on the fence, and glim flares, those little kerosene pots. But we never had a night prang, fortunately.
What did they have for a control tower? Was it just a caravan or something like that?
Yeah, or caravan or whatever makeshift building that they could have anyway. But no, it would be a caravan type of dispersal. But there was no control tower sticking up in the breeze. I mean, some Germans had shot it down.
Oh, you were saying earlier on that the Belgian fellow made you fly up and down the English coast.
Yes, well, it was to familiarise me with the English and the French coasts, and he used to make me do it at dusk and then at night, and I was very grateful to him that I knew that English coast like the back of my hand in case I got into strife anywhere.
Was this your flight leader?
Yeah, well, he was a flight commander, really, and he was a Belgian, Willie van Leerd.
Right. And you think that made a big difference?
It did. I thanked him on many occasions for knowing pretty well where I was, yeah.
Right.
I'd never been lost, but I was uncertain of my position.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's being a bit sarcastic.
The V1s were not very large. What were they like to sight during daylight hours?
Oh, they could be fairly difficult to see, both day and night, because they moved at around about 320 miles an hour, and they're not a very big target, about 26 feet long and about 16 feet wingspan, and they carried a ton of TNT in the front. So they went off with a bang.
What was the strategy to patrol against them as far as the squadron went?
Yeah, well, we used to send that we'd had aircraft, pretty well one or two airborne, all of the time. And sometimes you'd sit there for a couple of hours and nothing would come in, but other times two or three would come in. But they weren't, and they were being launched from France, really, and Belgium, but mainly France. And aimed at London, some were aimed at places like Portsmouth.
And how were you, Vic, did find out that a doodlebug had come over and that you were near one? How did they let you know?
Yes, well, we had radio communication, and there were about 4 or 5 radar stations on the English coast, and if some enemy aircraft or the doodlebug, they could pick it up on radar, and by a system of triangulation they could fix that on the operations room map, and they could give you a course to steer to intercept it.
Right. And did they also know exactly where your aircraft was as well?
Yes, well, we had an IFF, an identification friend and foe, a beacon, which our Allied Air English radar could pick up.
Did you find the V1s very difficult to shoot down?
No, I'm boasting it. I didn't find it very difficult to shoot down, but just getting them in your sights and pressing the gun button. And we had fairly good armament. We had 4 Hispano 20mm cannon, which were, half of them were, the shells were explosive and the other half were incendiary, so that you could knock bits off them.
And what normally happened when you hit one?
Well, the thing was the jet would, well, if you blew the jet off, the thing would go straight to the ground. And or you might, the jet might be blown off. It still goes straight to the ground, and then they had a measured amount of fuel in them so that they'd be stopping just short or just on London. And if the noise stopped, well, you knew it was going to go down in a few miles.
You said that two of the doodlebugs in particular gave you a bit of a shock.
Oh yes, well, I blew two of them up in mid-air and flew through the debris, and one was at night, and I was without any fabric on my rudder and upside down at about a couple of 1,000 feet, and I was quite busy righting myself and landing. I had a change of underwear next morning.
Yeah. Oh, you were saying about the Polish guys with their Mustangs too, causing problems.
Oh yes, well, it only happened to me personally on one occasion. I thought that I was going to shoot the flying bomb down, but there was a Polish bloke just shooting it down at the same time, and he put a couple of holes through my propeller. So he wasn't very far away.
Did some of the other 3 squadron pilots strike a similar problem?
I think so, yeah, but not as I had anyway.
How did you come to take a Tempest up to nearly going the sound barrier?
Oh, just trying it out. Yeah. Yes, I just thought that I'd see how it performed at, really high speed, and well, it got up to about Mach 1, and or as it's known now, and it started to shudder, so I thought that I was somewhere near the speed of sound, so I shut the throttle.
What sort of speed would that be on the thing?
Oh, about 560 miles an hour. But you don't look at the speed.
Yeah.
I mean, you're feeling the controls and everything. You don't know.
You said also that sometimes you flew as wingman to Beaumont.
Yes, Wing Commander Beaumont. I used to fly as his number 2 on a few occasions. He was an extraordinary pilot. He'd been he had a DFSO and bar on the DFC and 2 bars at the age of 24. And I think he'd got about 24 enemy aircraft. And he was chief test pilot for Hawker de Havilland, tested the Typhoon, Tempest, and the English Electric Canberra, and an aircraft called the TSR-2, which I think they only built one. But he was an extraordinary aerobatic general fighter pilot. I mean, he could do things with the Tempest that nobody else could do.
Apparently sometimes he put a bit of a display on at New Church.
Yes, on 1 or 2 occasions. He'd fly into the aerodrome circuit, and roll on his back on the downwind leg, and then right the aircraft and 3-point land in the same sort of turn into land. And he did that regularly.
What was Beaumont's attitude to paperwork?
Oh, poor. Yes, I think he, he was essentially a fighter pilot and wasn't interested very much in stuff that came across his desk.
And what do you think about his leadership qualities?
Second to none. Really very good indeed. And there was a good esprit de corps in all the three squadrons, 56, 486 and number 3. He was a first class leader.
Mm. Why do you think may have been the reasons that 3 Squadron managed to get the highest score of V1 shot down?
I don't know that. Well, we were first in it. I mean, we built up a score before other squadrons got there, but we were sort of in with the Tempest at the early stage. I mean, it's not for me to say how many I contributed to it.
Was there a competitive spirit amongst the pilots though?
Oh yes, there was. We were keen to work.
Mm.
Mm.
Oh, there's another time that you said you asked for a homing and a voice came over.
Oh yeah, that was off the off the French coast, and it was in very bad weather, and even in the northern hemisphere, the east is at 90 degrees, the bearing of 090, and I called up for a homing, and a cultured English voice said 090, which would have taken me in over the French coast, but I said some rude word over it to him.
You said also another time you got caught in a blizzard in Holland.
Yes. Well, there was a big freeze in Holland, and we were flying over Germany, and we had to get back as quickly as possible because we were the only airfield open at the time, and I mean we just sort of had to get in, and the ground crew fired green rockets sort of at each end of the runway to sort of guide us in. But I mean, if we had not been able to, land in Holland, we'd have had to, because the continent was pretty well snowed in, and we'd have had to go out sort of somewhere at the North Sea and bail out and wait to be picked up, which wasn't it was worthwhile trying to get in.
You said there was also a problem with the cockpit canopy in the cold.
Oh, that was icing up, ice on the windscreen. We didn't have any de-icing equipment on the wings or on the windscreen. So we did things, iced over, and of course the only thing to do then was to go to a lower altitude.
Mm. Did the cockpits get cold in winter too?
No, they were heated actually. There was a cockpit heater, which was good, but there were no pressure suits or G-suits or thermal suits there, but there was a cockpit heater.
The squadron then moved over to Europe. Vocal.
Yeah, well now the squadron initially went from England to Belgium, at a place called Grimbergen, an aerodrome out from Brussels. And we then moved from there up to Volpel, an airfield which 15 or 20 miles south of Arnhem and Nijmegen.
What are your memories of Vocal like as far as accommodation and conditions on the airfield?
Well, they improved, but the first couple of nights it was pretty cold. We were in a bombed out school with one blanket, but we eventually moved into a what we called a Monks Operational Training Unit, Monks OTU, and that was quite good accommodation.
Were there difficulties in landing and taking off in the snow?
No, the main difficulty under those conditions was taking off and or landing on ice, because a lot of the roads in Holland at times were coated with ice, and the ground crew were really wonderful, because they'd get up extremely early in the morning and spread sand on the runways, and while we were spending about 2 or 3 hours in Germany, and the place was usually quite thawed out by the time we got home.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
The ground crews must have had it difficult having to service the aircraft in those conditions too.
Yes, well, I would say that all the ground crew that I encountered on Number 3 Squadron were absolutely magnificent. They kept aircraft in top order, and you could not have wanted for a more loyal team. They were really good.
There's another little story you said about problems with sinus.
Oh yeah, well, do we have to leave that out? I don't know. Yeah, oh, we had a very good Scottish medical officer, and I'd had some sinus trouble, and it wasn't really advisable to sort of go at any high altitude flying for ear damage and the like. And I asked him if he could give me some treatment for that, and he said, I'll leave something at the mess bar, and there was a packet there for Flying Officer Bailey for 2 condoms and 4 aspirin. You see? There.
What do you think were the best features of the Tempest?
Well, it was a high performance aeroplane. It had magnificent controls and a very powerful engine, and it also had good firepower of 420mm cannon. It was capable of carrying a 45-gallon drop tank under each wing, or it also could carry bombs, although I didn't do any bombing in it. But it was a magnificent aeroplane.
Did the Germans had anything that could match it?
For speed, the Messerschmitt 262, but that was a very short range aeroplane. But I think perhaps the Focke-Wulf 190 was not as good as the Tempest, but was say 80% effective as the Tempest.
There's another time you spoke about practicing dog fighting and the problem with the throttle jamming.
Yeah, well, that was only just an incident in which I had to do a crash landing because the throttle jammed shut, and I had to. I thought I was going to make an aerodrome, which it was Lewis Aerodrome on the south coast, and I realised that I didn't have enough height to get there, and I decided to do a wheels up belly landing, but I picked a hedge which I thought would be a good place to touch down in. But I hadn't realised that it was nearly dark, and I collected a 6-foot deep ditch with a bang at about 90 knots or something like that, and it broke the broke the engine out of the mountings. I spent one night in the hospital, had an X-ray of my head. No cracks, home to the squad the next day.
Apparently you had a Tempest that you were particularly fond of, that you flew a lot and somehow managed to get some special unique markings painted onto.
Oh yes, I had a blue, couple of blue rings on the spinner, but I had my own after I'd been there for on the squadron for a couple of months. I got my own personal brand new aeroplane.
And what was the code letter on that one?
JFY.
Right. There wouldn't have been too many had personalised markings, would there?
No, but the squadron were, another that was my personal aircraft, but I mean there might be somebody with the letter Y in another squadron or another 20 squadrons.
Yeah. Oh, here's another interesting one in your logbook where it says a 109 got on your tail.
Oh, well, that's I did a bit of a loop, and one of my friends who was flying behind me dropped back a little bit and shot the 109 down. That was only just working as a team.
You must have been really on the ball to know that he was there.
Yeah, I had a rear vision mirror.
Right. And you also said some very interesting stuff about shooting up locomotives.
Oh yes, well that was when we were operating from Volkel. We did dozens of trips, about 300 miles into Germany, train busting and shooting up barges, troop trains, and also I think we attacked a load of hay on an autobahn, and the hay blew up. The ingenuity of the Germans, you see.
How do you think your training measured up to the task necessary for a fighter pilot?
Well, in my opinion, it was all right. I don't think that that's a fair question. I just did it as I was keen on the job. And I was well trained.
What do you remember about your final operation in a Tempest, and what happened?
Oh, well, I sort of remember that reasonably clearly, because I was attacking rail yards, and I must have been hit by some flak because I could only do a right one turn, and which made me a sitter for any enemy aircraft, and I was a bit unlucky in a way that I got bounced by about the last 10 190s, in Germany. And I think two or three of 190s attacked me from the left-hand side, and things started to get a bit warm, and the aircraft got on fire, not very much, but just started to burn, and the method of getting out of a Tempest was to roll it on its back, undo the harness and everything else, and drop out in an inverted row. And I was preparing to do this, and I didn't have much time to think about it, but preparing to do it, and undid my oxygen and undid my dinghy harness and seat belts and things like that, and I was just about to do the rolling over, and when 3 or 4 other aircraft, Fokker-Wulfs, attacked me, and I don't remember much else of that, because they must have set a 90-gallon tank, 150 octane, which went up my face, and I thought I had it then, and I must have passed out, and then eventually the cold air woke me up, and I was at about 800 feet from the ground. I promptly pulled the ripcord of the parachute. I pulled it so vigorously I tore it out of its housing, but parachute opened and I lobbed in some trees. And I was still burning from I didn't have any hair left, or I would not have qualified for a David Jones fashion parade or anything that stage. And I looked down below me in the trees, and there were half a dozen German Volkssturm home guard people there. And they had some lugers and pitchforks and other implements. I had a Smith & Wesson 38, which I carried as part of my equipment. But I thought I'd have only got one or two, and they'd have got me. And I thought, well, I gave the gun to them because I was, apart from the burns, I had cannon shell fragments that had gone through the armour plate, and I could feel them in my anterior or front abdominal wall, and I was bleeding a bit as well, and I managed to, with the escort, walk about a mile to a farmhouse where the people were sympathetic and took me in and got an ambulance and got me into a lazaret, which is a small hospital, German, and I was received first of all by a lynching party. My luck was in, and the hospital was run by a series of religious, or I think German Catholic sisters who sent the lynching party away and got me inside. And I wasn't in very good shape then, but I was fortunate to strike a German surgeon who'd been in World War I and received a first-class Iron Cross as a combatant in World War I, and he would not speak to me. I was a patient and he was a doctor, and he saved my life. And he sort of opened me up, and stomach cavity full of blood, but he stopped the bleeding, and I eventually left that hospital about 6 weeks later and spent another 6 weeks in a burns treatment centre at Wolverhampton.
You're also saying that you had a trip back to Germany to that location and family.
Yes, I did. As a matter of fact, after a couple of years after the war, I sent this family some food parcels to Germany, and in 1976 I revisited the family and spent a couple of days with the doctor's widow, but he had died a few years before from a carcinoma of the stomach. But they welcomed me, and also the family of the farming family put on a party for me. And incidentally, I'd only started to learn German for a week before I was shot down, but they wined me quite well with beer and brandies, and I found myself speaking what I thought was very good German before the end of the year. But it was a lot of crap. I also was in hospital. Whilst in the German hospital, I befriended a Frenchman who had been a POW near Munster for, I don't know, for 3 or 4 or more years. And he used to come as an interpreter to speak to French prisoners in this hospital. And he could not speak English, so I had to brush up my French, and I had a visit from him nearly every week. He'd ride his bicycle to visit the hospital, but I would get the BBC overseas news weekly, and so I was a little bit ahead of the Germans in the hospital because they weren't getting the BBC news.
You said that 3 Squadron had an interesting spread of nationalities on it.
Yes, well, British first of all. It was predominantly a British firm. There were Canadians, a couple of Canadians, a couple of Poles, 2 Americans, and some Australians, and a sprinkling of New Zealanders. And we had 1 free Frenchman too, who I thought was a very brave man. That he had a crash landing, and he did not wait for the ambulance, and one of his arms was cut off, and he just put his head in the air and walked to the ambulance. I've never forgotten that man.
Did you ever feel concerned about the dangers to your own life?
Well, what do you mean? How? This is a serious question.
Yeah.
I think I had some scares, but I mean, it was. We were at war. I mean, that's. I hoped I'd become a returned airman. That was everybody's thing. But when I was shot down in Germany, I worried my parents because I was missing, believed, killed for 6 weeks. So that, they got a bit of relief when I came home. That thing is flicking now.
Yeah, the tape's nearly ending. I think I've run out of questions. I think that's all.
Ah, well, I'll just get this thing for you in a minute. Ugh.
Have a guess how long that went for.
An hour?
Yep.
Oh, well, my bladder didn't tell me or anything. Now,